Hey everyone, my name is Clover, and today I'm going to give my take on the direction of Overwatch 2, of what is a good change, a bad change. There are some weird and wacky things that we have to keep our eye on and definitely be cautious about in the future, but what's key for us as a community is that we have to be patient. This is the beta, and all these updates are subject to change, and we just need more time for the game to develop. At the same time, this is a new game, and we don't have a full understanding of how the game is supposed to be played, and I think that's really key for this. But again, at the very least, we get to see what Blizzard is up to with Overwatch 2 and where the game is headed, and that's going to be my takeaway. Now, this is going to be a long video, so I'll do my best speedrunner impression to get through these topics. You can use the timestamps on the loading bar if need be. Okay, first one, 5v5. What's the difference with 5v5? Between Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2, there is absolutely no difference whatsoever for the fundamental playstyle and how you approach the game from a broad standpoint. Now, I will not deny that having one less tank on both sides of the field and just a reduction of CC globally does not influence the game, because it does. And the feel and the pace of the game is going to feel drastically different from Overwatch 1, where things you can do in Overwatch 2, you can't do in Overwatch 1. And that's not transferable. It's not vice versa. I don't know how else to say that. I think that really speaks to the fact that when players are saying Overwatch 2 feels more deathmatchy or feels like Call of Duty, that's because we've lived in this world where it's so oppressive, so restrictive in Overwatch 1, where defensive resources and having this extra tank that is the most oppressive role really hurts the game. And the biggest thing here is having one tank means that there's a guaranteed weakness on the enemy team, where before you could have a shield tank and have an off tank like Roadhog, so you still have that damage potential. Now it's either you have a shield tank or you don't have a shield tank. And I would go as far as to say, if we had a 2-1-2 system or 2-2-1 system, so one DPS or one support, that would drastically open up the game. Because if you say if let's say we have Baptiste, that means Baptiste can pretty much do everything, but he's very vulnerable to flankers, and there's a guaranteed weakness. Where in Overwatch 1 you would have Baptiste who could do everything, then you'd also have Brig who thwarts off dive and all these flankers. And that's what makes the game super oppressive, is that we have these duos that make this game kind of unfun. And now with one tank, because obviously they would take out the most oppressive role, at least one of the heroes, that really opens up the map. And the emphasis on the fundamental play style is more critical than ever before, because now your flanks can actually do something without having a diva in your face or a Zarya bubble protecting the guy you're shooting, and then have the other tank still hold off your main core, right? So your flanks can actually do something. And in Overwatch 1, it's basically a first-person MOBA where you use your defensive resources at the right time to counter the right things. And that's how Overwatch 1 works. But Overwatch 2, with one less tank, guaranteed weakness, the tank has to either choose to dive the solo flank DPS, but leave the main core, or contest the main core and leave the flank DPS, which means this is more of an FPS type game. And I think currently it's more chaotic than it should be. And with time, players will eventually learn to have more of the Overwatch 1 experience that we know, where it's more structured. And eventually it's just a new game, and it comes with time, honestly. But I think balance still dictates the longevity of the game, and that's something that kind of scares me. I don't really trust Blizzard, because they could just give someone like Sigma, who does everything, a little bit more stats here and there, and suddenly he can do everything by himself and you can literally not kill him. And that's kind of the extreme end. But the thing that kind of guarantees this is the fact that we have that one tank, or that we had that one tank, so we can't cover up those weaknesses, which means you're guaranteed more freedom. And that's something that can't go away with this new format. So while it can be a marketing thing, I think this is going to be the biggest change that might honestly be better than rule queue. I doubt it though. Rule queue is so much better. For the margins it had from open queue to rule queue competitively, whew. But yeah, 5v5, it's going to be lit. Reduce the CC too, huge thing. My one concern so far with 5v5 is just the damage potential. I feel like a lot of these heroes can do a lot of damage. It's also chaotic, so I mean, I just something I have to wait and see, but I'm seeing a lot of the hero elements be overshadowed, or overshadowing the weapons that heroes have. And so yeah, I mean, they might want to maintain the hero element of the game, but I would like to see more of an FPS type element. Push is a new game mode added to Overwatch 2, and I guess the best way to describe it is that it's an escort and control hybrid, where like escort, your main objective is to push a payload, or in this case a robot, further than the opposing team, where of course the enemies can contest the payload, so you have to clear out the fight and in order to push the payload even more. If you lose the fight, and this is where it's like control, there's no set attackers and defenders, which means if the enemy team wins, they now have control of the robot and they can push their way, and it's a game of tug and war. But I think the biggest difference between control and push is that control kind of acts like a 2CP, and that's because the objective is fixed. But with push, it's escort, which means the objective is moving and your positioning has to move dynamically. And that's going to be, it's going to incorporate a lot more chaos, but the map design is actually really well done, where, I mean, there's not really any chokes anymore, but the fact that they have like these windy spots where they have spirals, or they have windy roads, which further increases the distance a robot has to go, means that you're going to stay put in a certain area for a little bit longer, which means there are some defenders advantage spots that you can take. And again, that just comes with the game and the knowledge. Currently right now, that's not the case. You'll see in Overwatch League that they're actually incorporating a lot of these, where they actually figured out where the best defensive holds are, and eventually that'll trickle down to the rest of the community like it has in Overwatch 1. That will come with time, but so far so good. Push is a really great mode. The one thing that I will mention though, I mean, despite the fact that we're uncoordinated people playing in quick play, I think it's a very snowballing mode, and it doesn't give you a lot of time to contest the robot after you lose a team fight, where if you lose a team fight, usually the opposing team has enough time to push it almost to the checkpoint, where that kind of hard locks you into a certain position because you need to control or contest the robot from moving into the checkpoint. And I don't really like that. I think they should move the spawn points closer or expand the map more so that you can have more recontests and treat it more like an escort. Like if I'm picturing New Bonnie, if you hold forward near the spawn doors, it'll give you enough time for another fight later on. And I wish they kind of had that mechanic or whatever in Overwatch 2. I think that's just a minor thing. Obviously it's beta, can be fixed a little bit later. Along with this, assault maps and the assault game mode in general have been removed. And what Blizzard says is, after examining all of our maps and game modes, we noted that the assault game mode has always been a source of discontent for many members of our community. Well, the biggest thing with assault is in 6v6, it was all about the map design. In 5v5, with the current the settings where you have less CC, I think the assaults could be playable for sure, because there's just less restrictions overall. The maps though are still an issue. If you look at Temple of Anubis, and you can apply this to all the other whatchamacallit assault maps, is they're usually so heavily defenders favored, where you're on high ground and you're shooting down a choke, that is really hard for the attackers to do anything without ultimates to just basically barge their way on through, or good team coordination to move and rotate around certain positions. But it's also a fragile game mode, where if the defenders make a slip up and the attackers capitalize, obviously a 6v5, you're going to win that fight. And with that, you're going to snowball, because the attackers now have ult economy. They go to point B, they have ults ready, and the opposing team doesn't. And now you can actually push up and snowball the second point, and you got the 5-minute time bank. And that's how the game is very fragile. It's like one mistake either way, like drastically dictates the map. Now it's also very defensively favored on point B2, just how it's designed, where the spawn points are right next to the capture objectives or points, whatever. And so you got that factor going on, but also how the maps are designed. There's no way you can wrap around. They usually act like chokes. If you think of Hanamura, there's only realistically two ways to go in. You could go from the third way, but you need like a TP, or you need some sort of speed boost to get over that gap there. But in large part, it's chokes on chokes. You want to go from a different angle, well, you have to go through a choke in order to get there, and you don't really wrap around. You're still facing the same problems, and that's what made assault mode painful, is more or less the map design. I don't know about the game mode being the issue, because they rate that they're going to make some major changes to the map designs, thankfully, but also to the game mode, and I don't think the game mode really needs to be changed. Maybe for 5v5 and just the pacing of it, and especially when the maps come out, you might need to change around some of the times and how fast you can capture the objective. But yeah, there's no way Blizzard can get rid of kind of a staple in FPS games with a capture type game mode. There's no way they could do that. Moving on is the sound and audio changes, and with this, a lot of the sounds have definitely felt more impactful. A lot of the realism has come into play for a lot of these heroes. Obviously, a hero like Echo and Orisa sound very similar to what they do in Overwatch 1, but Soldier, Sombra, and a lot of more of the realistic type weapons sound more like real guns, which is cool. It makes everything sound super impactful. But I think they kind of overkilled it for the shotguns. That's kind of my opinion on all that. Overall, not super stressed out about the sounds, because it's something you just have to get used to now as you go back and forth, or as I go back and forth to Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2. They added some UI updates, sound updates. So that's going to be the kill stinger and teammate down. So whenever a teammate dies or an enemy dies, it sounds a different sound, if that makes sense. And so you can kind of figure out the state of the fight. So if you kill 3 people, the sound is going to increase in pitch, giving you that indication that you're killing that many people. Or if you're losing your teammate, it's also going to decrease the pitch. Then they've also got unit impacts, where if you shoot an armor HP hero, it's going to sound differently, giving you that indication that you're hitting an armor HP. I think this is a more of a quality of life thing. I'm usually looking at the health bar if I want to hard commit onto that hero or not. Then we've got the scoreboard. I really like the scoreboard. The scoreboard it gives you that transparency with your teammates. It's not like you're ever assuming your teammates suck. Like a lot of the times when I'm playing Wrecking Ball and I've got 4 golds and they're still flaming me, I'm like, no, you guys suck, I don't suck. But now this actually gives you transparency. So if you can't handle the truth, well, you might be better off playing Minecraft, okay? Because now we can all see it. It's global. You can see the opposing teams, so it'll give you that extra bit of information of who's their carry on that team and who you might need to focus a little bit more. I do dislike, and this is something that I just might have to get used to, I feel like the scoreboard is very spread out, and I wish there was a simplified version of the scoreboard and a complicated, where I just have to press tab for the simplified and press the right shift in order to get the complicated, because I feel like I can't really look back and forth between my heroes and what my team comp lacks, and I can't look right side to figure out what the opposing team's weakness is and how I can exploit it. At the same time, I'm trying to look at the ultimate meters, and they don't really tell me the percentage, and I wish that was part of it as well. So there's just some of those things that I personally don't like, and I prefer the original. Just get rid of the medal system, and if you can press those 2 different scoreboards, I think that's more important. The complicated for more of the downtimes when you're dead or after a team fight, that's going to be what I prefer. Okay, next up is going to be some of the video visual and HUD settings. The HUD simplified, like it. It's pretty much the same. It's just more geometric, simplified. There's no curviness to it. Everything's super clean, nice aesthetic. What I don't like though is kind of the impact visual settings that you have. So if you're getting shot by a bullet, there's this huge bloom of red that just kind of scares you. And like, I guess that's just Blizzard's way of saying you're taking damage. and you need to run for cover type thing, so it gives you that immediate warning. But I'd prefer to have that reduced, or have a setting that I can reduce that so that I'm not so scared, because sometimes I get shot with a bullet and I'm like, oh my goodness, I gotta duck for cover, and I'm at 194 HP out of my 200. Also, visual aesthetics with map lighting. So a lot of the maps, they've changed the dates and times, and a lot of them have now evening or dawn, so that intermittent time zone between day and night. And there's a reason why all these maps were day and night. I think only Gibraltar was the only evening map, but it worked out because you were enclosed in a cave, so it kind of was like a nighttime map for the most part, except for Third Point. Other than that, though, there's a reason why there's day and nighttime maps, because that contrast really allows me personally to see. The evening maps, I kind of get distracted. I get it for Ilios, because Ilios is just a white map, and so it's fine having that extra bit of contrast from your buildings and stuff. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the lighting. That just could be my eyes and me being blind. But that's my opinion. There's also one thing to ponder as I'm looking at it. Not all the maps are here. In Escort, there are, I believe, 6 maps. Is it Escort or is there a hybrid? Either way, there's 6 or 7 maps. Not all of them are here. I only see Circuit Royale and Dorado and Route 66, which I wonder if they're doing some slight tweaks, because those maps are more designed for 66. And I wonder if they're trying to add, a few boxes here and there for more extra cover. So that's just something to keep in mind. Continuing on, ping system. Ping system is really great because it's another way to communicate to your teammates without having to communicate. That's a huge one, because with the previous communication wheel, you can only say things that were directed at your team. How do I phrase this? Like group up and like push forward. Those are things that you say to your team as you're attacking type thing. Whereas with the ping system, you can indicate where people are immediately, reactively. So you see someone in the window, you can ping to that rather than saying group up, which was your best way of communicating, right? Or you can say push forward, and you can actually point to where you want to go. And that's going to be huge. I think the sound, I wish that was also another sound thing that they changed, is that you can increase the sound on that, so you can identify what your teammate is doing or the opacity of it. Yeah, I wish the ping system was a little more visible. I also wish you could customize what your initial ping was, kind of like Apex Legends, where you can have different buttons. So in Apex, instead of saying or having the defaults like double tap in order to say that's an enemy, I just have that bound to my left control, so I can instantly say that's an enemy, and then use my 2 button to figure out where we want to go, or looting here. And that's kind of what I want to see, is that more customization. That's the word I want to see. Armor HP gets reworked, and for this one, in short, it's going to mean the pellet type heroes, or the low damage but lots of these projectiles. So it's going to be Tracer, all the shotgun heroes will deal more damage in the Overwatch 2 armor system than in the Overwatch 1 armor system. There's a whole CarQ video that explained this. I highly recommend it. That way it gives you more of that idea and the math of it. And then also the burst heroes are going to deal the inverse. And so the armor reduces the incoming damage by 30%. That's a pretty big nerf, because I believe before the burst damage heroes would just get -5 damage to their weapons with armor. And there was also a special exemption for damage over time. So a hero like Ashe with dynamite would have her dynamite deal the full damage, because there's an exemption. But now there's no exemptions, which means her burn damage does not do anything against armor targets. This also impacts Ana. Ana will not deal with her primary fire. That's a big one. It's her primary weapon. She does not deal her full 70 damage against armor HP, which means I think that's kind of a hard nerf to her. Yet I see her an owl, so I don't know how this works out. But yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. That's a pretty big one. So yeah, look up that CarQ video, because it'll give you more information than what I've given you. And then Overhealth replaces Overshield and Overarmor. That's actually a fairly big one too, because Overhealth does not grant enemy any ult generation, and basically acts like normal health. And because it's replacing overshield and over armor, that means Brig is going to get nerfed because she does not have rally armor anymore, which means her ult isn't as impactful. And then someone like Sigma or Lucio is not going to grant that extra bit of ult generation, which that might have some micro effects. I think that's more impactful for a hero like Brig and Torbjorn's Overload, new Orisa's Fortify. That's going to really affect the armor HP. Another one of these weird changes and updates to the game is phase effect abilities. Now, these phase effect abilities are going to be specifically Zarya's Graviton Surge and Sigma's Gravitic Flux, which should restrict the movement of certain heroes because it's supposed to lock them up in the animation and deal its damage or whatever, just contain them. In Overwatch 1, you could fade away or have some sort of mobility to get away from that grasp it had. Now you can't. You could still use that ability to reduce your damage that you take, but you cannot escape it anymore. And I think that's a big one. So I guess when you're flung up in the air, it means that you can Wraith and possibly stop all that damage. I don't know how that works. I haven't faced a lot of Sigmas in the beta. I don't really know the interaction, to be honest. And role passives. Now, my take on role passives is that they should not really exist. I can understand the support one and tank to an extent, but I definitely do not agree with the damage one. The damage, faster movement speed, does not make any sense whatsoever, because now you can start outrunning a lot of these other heroes, and a lot of the, it's basically the heroes with mobility get that extra bit of power, I guess, because you're using that mobility to try and reach different locations. So it should be more punishing for a hero like Mei, who doesn't have any mobility. You just don't have any mobility to get to places, right? So it's punishing. There's a give and take of having different heroes. The tank passive too, the 30% knockback resistance and 30% lower ultimate generation, I don't agree with that either. I think everything should be more consistent. The knockback makes a little bit more sense, but in terms of just like how the characters look cosmetically, like Reinhardt and Orisa, I can understand that they would have a knockback resistance like Steadfast, but you shouldn't give it to all the tanks. You could argue that having this knockback resistance is helpful because if a Doomfist goes in, it means that he can stay in and not get booped around by a Wrecking Ball or by a Lucio. But you could also say just reduce the disruption you can get from certain boop abilities, namely the Lucio boop. Is a pretty problematic one, I would say, but you can keep like Wrecking Ball, keep a few of them, right? Like that's kind of how the reduction of CC worked, is they changed or removed the CC, the stuns from stuns to damage, or they remove them from stuns to slow effects, and they can probably do the same with boops. It's just boop them less for certain heroes, but keep some of the disruption from like Wrecking Ball, let's say. And so it's Wrecking Ball having to commit either to boop someone away from his teammates but not use his grapple to engage on the enemies, or vice versa. But Lucio or like a Zenyatta passive right now, I don't like the Zenyatta passive. Anyways, yeah, I think they just have to be careful with the boops and not give it to everyone. The less CC, the better. And for the support role passive, this, I bet, was just to reduce the dependency you have on your other support to heal you up. I think Brig actually is the only hero that can't self-heal with her abilities, other than just getting her whip shot or shield bash inspire. Other than that, yeah, like Moira has a way to heal with her orb. Ana can use her nade to heal herself. Baptiste has regenerative burst. Lucio has his heal passive. So there's ways that those supports can sustain themselves, and I think that should stay, and abilities should be more punishing, or it should be more punishing for your team if one of your supports die. I get it, because the 15 extra health per second really helps in the current chaotic state of the game, but in the future, when balance is more figured out, remove these role passives. I do not like them whatsoever. It kind of complicates the game when it doesn't need to be. Like the damage one makes no sense. Support, okay, that's fine. Maybe increase the cooldown from 1 second to 2 seconds, which might, there's a give and take of it. If you're a support and you take too much damage, at least you can heal yourself up after 2 seconds, but it's better than Overwatch 1 where you kind of just have to wait around for a med pack or play around med packs. So there's, yeah, reduce the dependency. That's good for support, but make it harder to get the healing. Tanks, you can keep some of the knockback resistance. I don't think all of it, or reduce some of the boop. Was it boop effects from certain heroes? I don't think all, but certain heroes like Lucio, definitely the Zenyatta one, and the 30% ultimate generation. I think you should get rid of that. Now back to more of the important things. New Hero Sojourn. Now Sojourn is a really fun hero, and you can kind of see how they balanced her because she's the in-between of Soldier 76 and Tracer, kind of like how Ashe was the in-between of McCree or Cassidy and Widowmaker. I just don't like her impact of her primary weapon. I think it needs to be more impactful and reduce the skill shot of the, what's it called, railgun. Either way though, it's still a fun hero with the mobility. There's some cool techs that you can do with her vertical mobility. I think the vertical mobility is a little bit over the top, but that's just me in terms of fun versus functional. I think that's a debate that the developer team needs to realize. I think they're going for more fun than functional, but that's kind of the thing that scares me, is if they're going heavily on the fun side of things, like with Orisa and how powerful she actually is. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be careful. It's something to be cautious about. Again, we'll have to wait and see when more heroes come out. Maybe she'll be one of those sleeper picks, because right now Soldier is the more consistent hero, and I can understand that from a long range and having pinpoint accuracy. He can deal more damage over time than Sojourn can, but Sojourn does rely on the railgun. In theory, like almost like Hanzo, in theory Sojourn is a better hero than Soldier with perfect aim. That's a problem though, you need perfect aim. The disruptor shot is cool. I think if you could reduce the impact of it, as in the damage as well as the slow effect, and make it more of a frequent cooldown, I would personally really like that. She does feel like a Destiny hero, able to slide around. And speaking of slide, I think you should be able to maneuver with her slide a little more easily, so you can actually strafe rather than going in the direction you're looking at, or whatever button you pressed. So I think that's something that they need to have, so it's more fluid. So I think she's overall a really fun character to get into. I think she's overtuned for what she is, but there's other heroes that are just thriving just because of the 5v5 balance changes. Overall though, highly recommend that hero. I'm probably going to main her because she's a tracking hero. Need to get better on my flick shots with the railgun, but yeah, cool. And then now I'm going to talk about the major hero reworks, not necessarily all the balance of it all, because I know that's subject to change, but the hero reworks I just want to go over because this is definitely a discussion of hero overlap as well as fun versus functional. So starting off with a Bastion. So he no longer can self-repair and does not have his sentry form where he stands still. He has a tank type turret form where he can actually use his Gatling gun and move around the map as he's doing so. That's a really cool ability that's really fun to use, and he's based off of his ability for sure. You can see that now with his configuration recon, that also has been changed to basically a pinpoint slow firing weapon, which is definitely not going to be as consistent as Soldier, but if you can land your shots and get those headshots, it's still not weak. And then you got the tactical grenade, which is a grenade that you can use for mobility reasons, kind of like a Junkrat concussion mine that you just have to time when you jump to get that vertical height, but also just deals more damage when you launch it near or onto people. Also has explosion damage. I think that one needs to be a little bit reworked, either to, you know, allow more movement based stuff with the tactical grenade, which it kind of seems like it's more of a movement ability, where you reduce the health, the self damage that you get from it, but also you could make it more of a damage ability where it has more range to connect onto people. That might be one way they can go about it. His ultimate though is a little bit weak. It's weird how you should use that ultimate. I think they need to increase the range of it, because or at least the speed at which you move around, because it's a little bit finicky. I think he's in a balanced state, and I think he's in a good niche where he's kind of like the Junkrat currently, in that Junkrat spot from Overwatch 1, where if you're skilled with him, he works. Kind of fits this weird niche. Cassidy, with his flashbang being removed, I'm someone who was an advocate for the flashbang, because flashbang was not the issue. It was the fan hammer paired with it, because the flashbang does not inherently grant value, right? It only stuns a person. After that, if you didn't have flash the hammer, you would have to land your 2 headshots, and that's the skill component to Cassidy. Now he has a magnetic grenade, and after seeing a lot of the highlights from him, holy, that thing needs to be nerfed, because just how it works is you need to be fairly close in the horizontal plane, but the vertical plane is more lenient because of the player is going to be taller rather than wider, right? So the grenade actually locks on from vastly like more angle. I don't know how to describe it. It homes in on people more vertically. Obviously you have to get the left and right pretty good in order for it to even recognize where the enemy is. But that thing is dangerous. It goes around corners. I think it's cheese. It's just for 131 damage for the direct, when you stick it onto someone, it's honestly a mini pulse bomb, and you can consider it a mini pulse bomb because effectively it's practically, it's almost killing an entire player. Like, right? Like you're not that far off from actually killing the target. Deadeye is a great ability, having that damage reduction, so it really allows the Cassidy to do more flank stuff. However, it doesn't build up the same amount of damage initially. It does 130 damage per second for the first 2 seconds after you channel the ultimate, and then 260 damage per second after that duration. So initially when you lock onto someone, you're not going to get that immediate skull like you would in Overwatch 1. So it's like it's allowing you to do these flank noons, but also not, because it's a little bit dangerous. So I guess it's just better used for when you're nearer to your team, so you have that 40% damage reduction, but also using it to zone off enemies. So I think Deadeye overall has been a neutral balance change. It really allows the individual to stay alive instead of being a boom or bust type thing. Doomfist has moved from the damage roll to the tank roll, increasing his HP from 250 to 450. That's a key thing with all these tanks. All the tanks increase HP, but for Doomfist and his type of playstyle really helps him out. His hand cannon, I guess I should just put it in short, Doomfist does not deal nearly the same amount of damage, and his role is more of a disruptor than anything else, and setting up his teammates almost like a wrecking ball, except if he was more potent and less survivable. So his rocket punch does not deal nearly as much damage and does not allow him to travel as far. It has more of a disruption effect where if he hits someone, you will boop them back, but also anyone within that close proximity will also be booped back. So he's got more of a range to his rocket punch. With power block, however, that kind of changes how his rocket punch falls. Now, just let me back up here. So with power block, it will block incoming damage from the front, including beams, by 90%. So he's taking minimal damage, almost like a Zarya and Genji hybrid. And Zarya hybrid, because you'll eventually charge up this little meter after taking 100 damage, you'll charge up your rocket punch, which will allow your rocket punch to be as potent when you're fully charged up to actually one-shot kill squishies, but also allow you to travel faster and further, and the area of effect blast that knocks back additional targets is twice as large. And targets impacting a wall will be stunned for an additional 0.5 seconds to 1 second. So with this powered up punch, you'll now stun them for 1 second depending on the charge amount. So that's interesting that the charge affects the stun. The next ability is Seismic Slam, and this has been transformed into more of a Winston Leap, where you can now have vertical and horizontal movement all in one, whereas before you would have a specific vertical with uppercut and then horizontal with Seismic Slam. Now it's all into one ability. I really like that. It adds more fluidity to the hero. And this one, it doesn't deal nearly as much damage. You still get that extra shields that you get from just landing your abilities from previous Doom. The effect, or the area effect radius, is definitely bigger, but now instead of dealing damage and being this close cone that knocks up people towards you, it will slow down targets by 30%, allowing yourself to land your own hand cannon shots or allow teammates to try and follow up on them. Because they're slowed by their movement. Can be canceled while pressing the ability key again, so you can use it to get that initial burst of momentum so that you can do some cool techs with it, and also take out people from the air. In terms of playstyle, how it works is almost the same as previous Doomfist, except he's going to be staying on the ground more instead of setting up and then like going on a rollout and engaging. So how they made it is more interactive, and he's more fulfilling a disruptor type role. And how do you use it is you would either power block first so that you can rocket punch in for the kill potential or for the boot potential, and then seismic slam out, or you would seismic slam in, power block so that you can absorb some of that aggression, then rocket punch out with that additional speed. And that's how his playstyle will work. He also has meteor strike, which can still be, it pretty much functions the exact same, dealing less damage, also slowing down enemies, and pretty much just an upgraded form of the seismic slam. How they made Doomfist really cool in terms of the fun, and is also quite balanced. There is a little bit of hero overlap with Wrecking Ball and Winston. There's some things that you might need to look at here in order to change Wrecking Ball or to dub down some of Doomfist and try and specialize him more instead of fulfilling more than just his role. Orisa, like most other tanks, have got increased HP, nothing new there, but with her augmented fusion driver, it acts like a heat mechanic. The longer you hold your primary fire, the more you charge up this burn, and if you go past that burn and you overheat your weapon, you will not be able to use your weapon for 3 seconds. Now, if you're careful with it, you can fire infinitely. There's no reload. It deals more damage the closer you are to the target and has a drastic fall off range, so you are definitely more of a close-up brawler that kind of fits in line with the rest of her abilities. Then she also has the energy javelin. Energy javelin throws a spear, kind of like a whip shot that had a stun to it, and I think they have to be a little bit careful here. I think they should nerf this one for sure, for just how versatile this ability can be in terms of just how much damage you deal. It deals 80 damage and then also stuns people. If it hits someone into the wall, it also does an additional 40 damage and stunned an additional 0.3 seconds. That's just incredible. Then there's Fortify, which still has the same effect of being immovable, but you do have a movement speed debuff. I think the fusion driver, you do not slow down while you're using it. I might be wrong on that. I'm just looking at the patch notes, but they don't see it or say it. But the Fortify reduces your movement speed by 20%. Now it provides an extra 125 extra Overhealth while active, reduces heat generation from Orisa's weapon by 50% while active, so you can almost fire infinitely. And the duration of Fortify increased from 4 seconds to 4.5 seconds, so a micro thing there, but really adds up over time. The Javelin Spin is a bigger form, maybe someone would say a deflect and kinetic grasp hybrid, where it's a short range, doesn't deflect, kind of sucks up everything. You are faster while using it and 20% faster after using it for 2 seconds, but it also more critically boops people back. So how would you use it? The two uses are for disruption, so that you can move people into certain locations that they would rather not, and of course abusing the fact that you have that defensive thing. Obviously it doesn't block beams, but most of the projectiles you can eat up, meaning that you can protect yourself while you're trying to displace. You could also use it for mobility, so that you could use your Terror Surge, so that you can get into certain locations, use your Terror Surge. And I short sold myself, but the third use of it, use that extra bit of speed boost so that you can block and save your teammates who might be overextending. So she's very versatile already. And then Terror Surge. Now this is an ultimate ability that keeps Orisa locked in place and you cannot move while channeling the ultimate. But what happens is any enemies within a close proximity will be sucked towards you and will reduce their movement speed penalty by 30%. So there is a chance for those enemies to actually escape your radius. But during that time, Orisa's channeling and increasing, ramping up the damage of her ultimate. Releasing the charge deals up to 225 damage based on how long it was channeled. I wonder if they should nerf her ultimate so that you cannot just run in and use your Terror Surge and not have that fortify effect naturally given. I think that's really going to balance her out. Okay, so the next one after that is going to be Sombra. Now with Sombra, her hack has been kind of rebalanced, I would say. Her hack, instead of hacking for 5 seconds, is going to hack for 1 second. So there's that brief period where enemies cannot use their abilities. But after that 1 second duration, they're able to use their abilities, allowing them to escape. So there's some fair play elements to her ability. She's not taking away the fun as much, but she will give, I guess what you would call it, a damage dealt to hack targets is now increased by 40 seconds. That's her new opportunist. There are some other things with hack that aren't as substantial, so I'm just going to move on to stealth. With stealth, you can hack people while in stealth, so you're not wasting that cooldown, but it does reveal you for that brief time while you're hacking. And then about her ultimate EMP, instead of hacking, well, she does hack them for that one brief time. Instead of hacking them, she also deals 40% of the current health to enemies. That's going to be critical because it's current health and not like Sigma's, which is half of their total health. How this would work is Sigma's ultimate, if you had Ana, the Sigma, no matter what, will deal 100 damage. So if Ana was 200, she would go down to 100 after Sigma. And then if Sigma were to use the ultimate again on Ana and she was 80 HP, she would be down to 0 because she's taken off 100. With Sombra's ultimate, it's going to work a little bit different because at 200 HP, Sombra is going to remove 80 HP, so 40% of their current health. And then if Sombra were to use that on Ana, if she was 40 HP, or what's it easier, 10 HP, then she's only going to be dealing 4 HP of damage. You see how that works? So she gets more value the more HP they have, which means this is basically enforcing you to use your ultimate proactively. And that takes us to the takeaways. With the takeaways, the game simplified itself with 5v5. That's a huge change, allowing for more free playstyle with the reduction of a tank player, but it is also complicating the game once again with some of these weird things that they're adding in terms of trying to make the game more fun, but at the same time, is it really functional? The role passive, I think, shouldn't be in the game. There are some tweaks that you could make so that they can function, but I think the balance overall will be changed over time as players get more used to the game, and it will function more like Overwatch 1, just with 5 heroes instead. In terms of balance, I don't like canceling abilities. That's just something with just hero interactions. I feel like if a hero uses an ability such as Genji Deflect, that if you wait it out and you're able to sustain that, I guess, power level, power spike that the enemy has, that you should be rewarded with just being able to use your hero and use your abilities properly to counter them. Rather than Genji Deflect, you kind of have to wait it out or predict when the Genji is going to drop his deflect. And while there's that little bit of skill component and the interaction is going to function differently, I like the hard version of if you use that ability, you can't get rid of it, and now you're exploitable. And I think that's part of the game with punishability, which would also simplify the game, I think, further. Hero overlap, Soldier and Tracer. That might have sounded like the same, but they all have the same Sojourn, not soul, whatever. So hero overlap is going to be a problem. Here's the thing. It does simplify the game. If you notice, like all the other, like Bastion, Cassidy, Sojourn they all have weird forms or weird effects to their damage abilities, but they're all damage abilities which functions pretty much the same. Orisa's energy javelin spin, or whatever it's called, is another damage ability with a unique function. So it simplifies the game where you kind of recognize what they're going to do, but I feel like there's too much damage in the game and hero overlap where you need to find some way to add some uniqueness to it, not just a damage ability that bounces, and then a damage ability that homes in on you, and then damage ability that stuns you, right? Like, I think there needs to be more abilities like Halt. That might be controversial, but I think there needs to be more setup. I think actually Sojourn's disruption ability, I forget what it's called, that is actually one of the best abilities that they've made, because it's got some utility to it, but also a little bit of damage. You've also got Hanzo's, Sonic Arrow, Mei's Ice Wall, just as further examples. The fun and functional debate, or I guess you could say the fun versus functional debate, trying to balance out the two. Zen with his snap kick thing. I think that's just fun, or it's petering on the over functional, if that makes sense. I don't think it's a healthy thing for the game, because it's just, what can you do about it if you're up and close? Because as a player, you're being moved around and you don't have as much control because you're just getting thrown back every single second. I don't really like how that is, and it also incorporates some more cheese. Not a fun thing. You can keep the 225 HP, but I don't like the boop of it. You can make that on a cooldown or something of that sort. Orisa 2 is more of a fun hero because she has so many tools and they're so overtuned. Definitely she will get nerfed, so I'm not really scared about Orisa. At least I'm hoping Blizzard will recognize how powerful Orisa is and how versatile she can be. But that's like a great example of how Orisa can be overwhelming. I do like the design of skill to reward curve, such as Sojourn. Just her kit in general is so much more skill, where you have to charge up your rail gun so that you can hit this kill shot. And it's very fine-tuned, where if you don't get the certain amount of energy, then your railgun is pretty much not going to do anything and can be easily healed up. So you need to really hit those headshots and get enough charge to do so. Then Tracer and Genji, those are great signs that the game is more of this FPS high skill type game. And same with Doom. Doom is a high mechanical hero that you just throw into there, that it really shows off that the game is trying to strive for the skill to reward curve, and that shows that these stuns and these large defensive abilities aren't as impactful. With 5v5, one of the great indirect nerfs to it is AoE healing, and the stacking of AoE healing and its potency. That's one of the biggest things, especially with shields too. You now don't have two tanks that have 500 HP each. Huge things with just 5v5. It fixed a lot of issues. The things I don't like are visual clutter and distortion when you're getting an elimination or when you're getting hit by shots. That's something that you can add in the options. Certain sound effects too distract you from the gameplay, such as like some of the fences I've kicked down are so loud, and then I missed a roadhog sneaking up the stairs and then hooked me and I died. Voice lines too, I think that should be its own separate setting and not just sound effects or the voice effects type thing, because I want to hear Athena and what she's saying, but I also want to kind of dilute more of the voice lines that you get from the hero interactions and whenever they get kills, because they always, like when the Ana gets killed, they say a certain phrase. And then the atmosphere type noises like speakers, I feel like that should be its own setting rather than just the sound effects setting. Push maps need to be closer, or at least the spawn rooms. That would be a simple fix. But if you see, there's not a lot of things to really fix. I think the concept of the game is there. Obviously it's beta, they're going to flesh out some of the details. They got enough information from the community as well as just the data that they got from the beta, so I think we're in good hands from here on out. And for my closing thoughts, the game may feel like it plays differently, but the core nature of PvP Overwatch we knew, and I guess still know because we're going back to Overwatch 1, are still the same. There's more emphasis on playing near teammates for added support when fighting. Target priority is huge. Playing on power positions is vital. And I think a lot of this comes with time, and this is where a competitive mode would really help, because when you're paired with the equal skill players, that means you will have like more or less the same mindset. So if you're at a high rank, you're going to play more structured positioning. If you're low ranks, well, you're not facing the high mechanical skills, so there's a way for you to improve upon yourself. And that's where competitive mode is so crucial to this and the success of Overwatch in terms of a competitive mode and not just casual. Back to positioning, the only change really is chokes, maybe harder to hold, but one tank means the group will either have to flank heavy or play as one unit. So playing around the Reinhardt shield, or everyone is kind of just doing their own thing, creating all these angles, such as like the Doomfist type comps that we see in Owl. And as long as this new approach to the game balance is the same, the game is less oppressive, which therefore means outsmarting and out-aiming rewards the player more. And that's why this version of Overwatch is better.